To be clear, I don't speak against genuine feminism. The worst silent truth stops men and women from understanding each other in the West, one that hurts our ability to unite towards fixing any other problem in society, since we're so divided on a basic, gendered level. The mainstream has most of us believing that men commit practically all violent sex crimes compared to women. Makes it easy to believe men are born creeps who deserve growing up smeared and projected on, as many like myself experienced. But I found huge numbers revealing just how violently creepy both sexes are. Here are stats never shown, involving what's called made to penetrate. Most offenders are reported to be women, reported by men. The reports can involve blackmail, being drugged, physical force or threats, situations presented as rape if genders were swapped. The first year's count was over 1 million, roughly matching the number of women raped that year. Every year's 12-month survey defied stereotype. High rates of mental trauma were of course reported, despite men being shamed by society into burying pain. Some male victims fear being in the same room as women, yet have to feel ashamed of that fear. What shocked me is so many men bothered reporting this. Many of these men even have longer-lasting trauma symptoms due to the collective gaslighting by society that men can't be victimized by women. So, bigoted mainstream stat definitions gave us a lazy view of what counts as rape all our lives, leaving future male victims not even aware of danger. Made to penetrate stats were never even surveyed till 2010. And despite the surveys, the numbers typically don't count as rape or anything taken serious. It doesn't even exist in public opinion. Up to 40% of male victims were violated before age 18. Men are famously discouraged from reporting abuse, so much that men often don't recognize abuse. So seeing such high stats is hard for me to believe. But they are from the CDC. If this fully got out, it would turn society upside down for the better. That is, if people cared. Call me crazy, but taking these stats serious would help everyone practice taking sexual violence serious for female victims as well. If men are raised to not recognize abuse toward themselves, that trains men to commit more abuse. A terrible irony overlooked, upheld even, by some of the same people who virtue signal against patriarchy. The influential self-proclaimed feminist, Dr. Mary Koss, who worked with the CDC, helped shape why Made to Penetrate doesn't hold public significance or qualify as rape in surveys. This qualified psychologist bunched all male victims into some obscure category, even the ones with significant mental trauma. You're encouraged to correct me if I simplify stats. Either way, loads more men are victim to women predators than we're told. And it greatly increases the total number of people affected by sex violence to where we should stop being hypocrites about gender and see that society never cared about stopping predators. In fact, society promotes and worships the mindset of a predator. I was shamed to my face about body count when I was just a child. Not by men, but by a group of older, popular teen girls who had no business approaching me. Does that not suggest that sexuality is being reduced to dominating and degrading others? My ex was instructed by her mom to break me down mentally through a published book manual, just to control me. These all sound pretty damn close to what psychologists say about the rapist core mindset. And yeah, I had local male friends that women tried to violate sexually. Our capitalist culture, obsessed with ruthless hustling, status, and accumulation to define self-worth, will always create the highest number of cold, calculated, transactional-minded individuals who prey on people one form or another for financial gain or influence. Being highly manipulative is seen a valid strategy for success. We constantly practice social and financial predation. Of course, I believe that environment trains the sexual kind of predator. The mindset of apathy and exploiting people as some transactional resource is what most predators share. Does that not express itself in the extreme degree that we objectify sexuality for profit in popular culture and imagery? And what kind of mind exploits, manipulates, and objectifies the most intimate relationship-building feelings into something cold and transactional as sex work? If we wanted to stop rapists, we wouldn't promote the core mental traits most rapists have. The recent news of the pedo Epstein class going unpunished alongside the public's mild reaction, says more than enough about our acceptance of predators. You don't have to be made of male muscle to be a manipulative predator. Mentally abusive narcissists are one of the most ignored cancers in society, downplayed as some random minor nuisance. In the real world, they're rampant and contribute to the deep traumas that drive physical violent retaliation and self-harm. Blame is heavily shifted onto a victim's own choices for that much bigger problem. The worst victim blamers have survivor bias, and apathy, narcissism, and weakness of its own. When I barely vented the most traumatic event in my life, I was told, "You are what you attract," by a woman I thought was family. They didn't even know the details. They just had judgment prepared, perhaps the moment they laid eyes on me. That's why men don't open up. We don't want to be gaslit right when we're vulnerable. Men already feel other men and women are predators in that regard. It doesn't leave much room to see each other as human or worth helping. Male victims of narcissists are just told to man up and get over it instantly. I'm just as talked to that way by women posing as feminist, or worse. I was also framed by several women for vandalism, or worse, who knew they were lying. They were aware they hold that kind of social leverage over men, so I constantly resist feeling that women are especially encouraged by society to be emotionally manipulative with no conscience. I don't let these feelings discriminate against individuals I speak to. I can't afford the insult of reducing myself to the same level as people who look down on me and wish to see me fail. I hope you won't either, whatever your gender. The patience in getting to know strangers is the only thing keeping humanity alive. I have enough daily flashbacks to where I plainly see misandry is integral in society, not just patriarchy. Capitalist ideals influence many self-labeled feminists to be hyper-individualistic. Many times I've watched them focus on their own individual experience to the point of condemning men as an entire class, or even declaring superiority of women over men. It's the same right-wing thought process that condemns migrants or other races as entire classes. Men's rights groups also often do this to women. They regress to this thinking because the system glorifies individual empowerment and competition above ethics and morality. There's nothing beyond self-centered conclusions that shut everyone else out, since that's believed to be the safest option. Having the empathy and intelligence to put yourself in someone else's shoes is the most discouraged thing under capitalism. There are endless stories of people being screwed over for doing that. This is last minute, but I want to add that generalizing everyday people makes it easier to see them as just competition. I see why it's so encouraged. This is what billionaire capitalists think profit them most. To have everyone beneath them think only about stepping on each other as rivals. To keep the slaving and consumerism as the only meaning of life. Back to the video. Both the radical type feminists and the far right claim their own bigotry is a trauma response, one form or another, rather than just racism or misandry. That is always the excuse hyper-individualist people use to elevate themselves above accountability. It's plain why we have men versus women culture wars rather than a full focus on ending systemic suffering. It's why cultural Marxism is the dumbest myth of all time. Cultural capitalism is what infects social justice into behaving as selfish as conservatives. The CIA has a history of infiltrating feminist and other progressive groups in order to pervert them into serving right-wing geopolitical interests. So don't have illusions that liberal confusion and divisiveness comes from the left. Billionaires overwhelmingly fund right-wing economic policies in their political spending. Even George Soros obeys that rule. He even funded anti-communist projects in the 1980s. We've denied society also runs on hatred and apathy towards men. When I see the many privileged people posing as feminists, laughing at the fact men kill themselves at a much higher rate than women, or mocking the male loneliness crisis, I couldn't be more revolted by their decadence and lack of humanity. Has it ever occurred to these posers that denying men are human or have feelings at all is a big part of that crisis? Since childhood? They try to twist the male loneliness crisis as men almost solely crying about not being laid. The crisis isn't new. It just changed name. I know women are getting lonelier too, but the term male loneliness crisis should exist, considering the level of denial and gaslighting against men contributing to male loneliness. The posers sometimes have the nerve to call themselves leftists, but their actions serve the divisiveness of toxic individualism and every man for himself, which these same people are supposed to understand is reactionary far-right thinking. I believe the typical discourse in society regarding social problems has become so disoriented that it's overall a terrible joke at this point. Society needs men to be seen as inferior beings whose pain never matters. It requires both sexes to look down on each other so that we never cooperate against tyranny. If we can't accept that, then empathy doesn't even exist. And men who are genuinely betrayed by their community will keep running to the manosphere to cope. Stat definitions are always corrupted to push agendas. It's not just rape stats. Capitalism justifies itself through saying socialism killed more than capitalism. The source capitalists use, titled The Black Book of Communism, is denounced by half its own authors, the ones who wrote most of the entire book. They denounce it as a death count inflated to the point of obsession. Global charities like Oxfam argue that the many millions of preventable deaths due to poverty, lack of health care, and hunger each year are structurally linked to global inequality and capitalist economic systems. The last century of capitalist poverty alone would dwarf socialist boogeyman numbers. If you add the fact that capitalist profit motivates so many wars, you get death counts in the hundreds of millions. I can say this as a libertarian or a leftist. The point is, we must be objective about how we study suffering, instead of parroting whatever our tribe says. Anything less is not a genuine care for our neighbor, or humanity. The ultra-rich absolutely benefit from how divisive and lacking the mainstream understanding of sexual violence is. They actively prevent solutions. As much as this revelation of sex violence has made me feel completely betrayed and wishing I were a different species, I already felt that since age 11. The only thing I can do is continue being humane on principle, as my best chance at finding people who care. One of the few friends who respected me, defended me, saw me as human, has just died very young, alone at home. I believe he'd be alive if society had enough humanity. I'll die knowing that. I only just learned about his handwritten goodbye notes, that he felt deeply alone and a burden to people. No one exceptionally humorous, observant, charming, and poetic as he was simply loses hope that quickly by his own fault. His mental pain no doubt contributed to his declining health. From what I've seen, people who excel at empathy and observation tend to die first, since our culture just sees no value in those things. I'm reminded of how I read that intelligence is positively correlated with depression. If we are to rebuild the meaning of community and empathy, I would hope everyone who sees this begins writing and rationalizing their own experiences into media and community projects. Organizing a new political party or movement that actually stands for self-awareness would be ideal. Some people befriend me through the channel to later condemn me or project their past experience onto my character without holding conversation to prove it. It reminds me of how relationship illiterate people are under capitalism, due to life becoming objectified, transactional, hypersexualized. Maybe it's the only lens they see romance and friendship through. It's no wonder relationships don't last. Anyway, I last said I'd focus my next vlog on pedophiles, but when I saw the made to penetrate thing, I realized it was all connected, and that I should focus on the psychology of all predators. I'm too in shock from all this to say more. I am always available as a friend or to answer your questions. Take care.